Hi, I'm Julie.
And I'm Caleb. Welcome to Nursing You, the podcast where we redefine nursing in today's healthcare landscape. Join Julie and I as we step outside the box on an unconventional healing journey.
Together, we're diving deep into the heart of nursing, exploring the intricate relationships between caregivers and patients with sincerity and depth.
Our mission is to create an open and collaborative experience where learning is expansive and fun.
From the psychological impacts of nursing to the larger implications on the healthcare system, we're sparking conversations that lead to healing and innovation.
We have serious experience and we won't pull our punches, but we'll also weave in some humor along the way because we all know laughter is often the best medicine.
It is. And we won't shy away from any topic, taboo or not. From violence and drugs to family and love, we're tackling it all.
Our nursing knowledge is our base, but we will be bringing insights from philosophy, religion, science, and art to deepen our understanding of the human experience.
So whether you're a nurse, a healthcare professional, or just someone curious about the world of caregiving, this podcast is for you.
One last thing, a quick disclaimer before we dive in. While we're both registered nurses, nothing we discuss here should be taken as medical advice. Always consult with your doctor or a qualified healthcare provider for any medical concerns you may have. The views expressed here are our own and don't necessarily reflect those of our employers or licensing bodies.
So let's get started on this journey together. Welcome to Nursing You, where every conversation leads to a healthier world.
And not berating yourself, not judging yourself, not focusing on all the external things that made you that way, because none of that matters. It really is just where you are. And if you can stop and see right where you are current now, that's where then you can change your future and where you're going. If you're constantly looking at the back of the bus, you're never going to know where you're going.
You're right. Feels like you're a passenger.
Yes. I think we talked about this with someone.
Yeah, I think we have.
Yeah, the passenger and the driver. I feel like maybe, I don't know where we heard that, but being the driver, which I guess would be synonymous with like the agent of your life. You're the driver. You're saying to you and all yourselves where we're going versus like, you know, being in the passenger seat and just being a rider or being all the way in the back where you have no control and maybe you're even sitting backwards, it's just an evaluation. Like, where are you? Where are you in your life? Where are you? And the driver's seat cannot be mistaken for like control because it's not. It's not who has control over the vehicle. It's who's driving and creating the path versus like, I only drive with a map, and I have to have full control because if you're gripped on the steering wheel and you feel like you're in the fucking driver's seat, most of the time that's not. Or you're just driving an electric car who's on one of those rides at Worlds of Fun. Where were those? Where the car and it just you think you're a kid. You think you're driving. You're not fucking driving. You're being driven. Yeah.
It kind of brings up for me just the all the ideas of the kind of Web3 blockchain. All of these things are very much ethereal. So I don't know if I shared the idea that the first time that we communicated through sound waves, we crossed into an ethereal plane. Have I presented that idea on here? Okay. So the idea is that if we have time travel and we go back and we pick up somebody from the 1700s, from the Enlightenment period, they're becoming scientifically aware, 1800s maybe, becoming scientifically aware, science has proven some things, but you bring that person forward to today. Just imagine going back there and you've got an iPhone and you're dressed the way that we're dressed. We would, number one, look like aliens. Yes. But we would be we'd meet some guy or girl and the conversation would go, actually, let's push the person forward to someone who understands telephones.
Okay.
That's to whatever time frame that was. We've hit that place. We grab that person and you show them this phone and you punch, like it's you and I are back at that time, and we're explaining how we communicate through phones, and we dial, and my phone rings to your phone, but there's no physical connection. It makes no sense. It would make no sense to that person. They are so bound up in the physical experience of life that this idea would be magic.
Yeah.
It would just be magic. And so you take this idea that back then everything was physically connected, and come forward to today where we have the ability to communicate through the ether. I don't know how I understand triangulation. I know that this cell phone tower over here and this cell phone tower over here and this one over here, they're all communicating, and my phone pings to this one and it pings to that one and it pings to that one. And you can pinpoint within inches. I mean, we're using triangulation. We're using that technology to map our mouth. They put this wand in my mouth and they mapped the whole thing. Oh, wow. Like all through triangulation, all through this process that like that's how we kind of transcended the physical plane and created this ethereal way of communicating. And so when I think about that, the more ethereal that we get, the further we separate our minds from physicality, the more important the spiritual structures become. Because like if you were entirely a spiritual being, you would cease to exist. If you go and you be that monk, and if someone was truly capable of being that, like let's say like somebody who is imprisoned for some ideological belief, and it is a spiritual task that they are on to make this change, and they're going to starve themselves because they believe so deeply in this thing, they become fully spiritual. They're completely disconnecting from their spirituality, and they die.
Yeah, like that body dies. That body dies.
Yeah. So if you're either one, I think that's like to drive the point home. The enlightenment thinking, what we're talking about here today, is all physicality. And like, this is why I'm studying the Enlightenment period, because I'm trying to understand why nurses are killing themselves. Why did I want to die?
Yeah.
Why? I mean, I didn't want to die, but I wanted to die. Like all of the confusion that was driving that experience for me, it was so physical and the spiritual side it was so imbalanced that I didn't want to be here anymore. Yeah. And so the real task that we have as we move forward is connecting the spiritual and the physical. I know that. I mean, intuitively, experientially, it just is true. It's the truest thing maybe that I've said on here. Yeah. And trying to understand evidence-based practice is, to me, probably the most important work that I can do in this space, because I believe that it holds within it the deep truth of why we don't. I mean, and it's not just nurses. This idea, I mean, permeates our entire society.
Because suffering is not just something that nurses do. Suffering is something that everybody does.
It's human
suffering. And I think one way to help alleviate some of that suffering is learning and practicing the connection between your spiritual and your physical parts, because that has alleviated a lot of my suffering. And we could do a whole podcast on that. But, I think we got to hear by what are some ways, or how do we deal with kind of the unknown of the future, of nursing and just future in general and technology and things that will continue to come. I mean, just like we went back and showed, the person from the 50s our cell phone, and it was like, how could they even believe it? It would be imaginary. It would be something that someone dreamt about. It would be, but it is now. So was it possible? Yes. So are all of these things possible? Yes. because we can't see it. We just have to know it and be able to maintain kind of a grounded way about yourself to move through a lot of these changes that are going to happen. It is. Things never stay the same. It seems like it is, but you could say never, or, they're always changing, and it might not be minute to minute, but it definitely is decade to decade. And it definitely is every 25 years. You look back.
Oh, no. That's the thing that this scientist was saying, is that the rate at which we are exponentially growing in knowledge is like down to, I think, months.
Yeah.
I mean, it's astronomical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because of that's just the way that it is now. It starts out slow. It's kind of the opposite of like, when the baby is born, if you continue to grow like that, you would be like a giant, but the growth is
right.
slow. But this is kind of opposite. So the growth is slow, and the more advanced we get, the more technology the quicker it can go. And it is. I mean, it just is.
Right.
Yeah. And we're feeling it. And I think that's why we're talking about it. We don't sit down and like make a decision and be like, well, what should we do? We're very intuitive. We are feeling something. And so that's why we talk about it. And
we're
I'm
exploring.
sure that,
it's an exploration. We're exploring.
Yeah. Of things that come into our thoughts, and clearly the future is changing. I mean, there were so many things that happened even just this year. It just is. And so I think it's, kind of on the front of our minds, thinking about it and wondering, and, being open to it, and then also being grounded so that you aren't scared and you live in fear of, oh my God, it's like, oh, okay. Just an attitude of openness and kind of knowing where we fit in with all that.
I do think we're uniquely positioned with the experiences that we have and the time that we're in. I mean, I think I saw that when I first went into nursing. I saw that. I think I saw the potential to figure out what my place would be in it was. I think that it was so large that I think I knew that I would be able to come up with some solution to some problem. Intuitively, I think I foresaw that. It was part of my decision making going into nursing, that there would be, I would get my experience and figure something out. I don't know. Yeah. I don't think there's no way that I could have known what it was, and I still don't know exactly what it is. But I think we're doing it.
Yeah. Well, I think
figuring it out.
The stage of the journey that we're on brought us together, and because of the experiences that we've been through and our strength to move through those experiences and be aware of the impact that they had on ourselves, and then to be able to just feel the need to share it, that all means something. And it's like listening to your inner dialogue that you're like, am I making that up? Or did I just make that up? Or is that from like a movie? Or is someone telling me? Am I hearing something? So kind of the learning to discern what those are, but knowing the possibilities for all of this. And I don't know, the word surrender is a lot today for me. It really is just surrendering to a knowing and allowing it to flow, and just being able to stay in that flow state is really what I'm practicing these days.
I mean, I always say that one of our skills as critical care nurses is to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations.
Yeah, for real.
And that requires a surrender to the moment and allowing, that's kind of the navigational component to what we do, that we navigate those critical situations with a calmness that is rooted in surrendering to the chaos that is in front of us and addressing in real time every problem that emerges. And it's just so present. It's so present, so mindful.
Don't you think too that it's prepared us to be here today to go through some of the things in our lives that we've gone through. It's like you can learn that practice and skill, or for me, I learned it in my career, but then I was able to use those same skills with myself on myself. So you
Yes.
got chaos in the room and you got alarms beeping and IVs and this, you're flipping this and getting the drugs and, that. And you learn to manage because you can't just leave. You can't
Right.
just give the patient to somebody else. Like you have to press on and you will. And we do. And you
Mm-hmm.
make it to the end of your shift, hoping that patient is still alive, doing all that stuff. But the skills that you learn doing that, even a med surg nurse, managing that chaos of all of those patients, whatever it is, you can use those skills to then start understanding the chaos within yourself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
By knowing because you've been there and you've done it. And so you know that you have the capability to stay
Mm-hmm.
with,
Yep.
to learn understanding, to be compassionate, non-judging. No, you're never judging that patient in there when you're dripping drips and flipping bags and you're not cussing that patient. You're just, because it just is the situation, and
Yeah.
allowing that same mentality for ourselves that it just is. Things you went through as a child, things you've gone through in your career, things you've seen, people you've dealt with, it just is. And so using that skill of managing chaos, you can manage your own chaos. And I didn't really even know I was doing that when I was managing my own chaos until I stepped way back and was like, this is literally what you're doing. So see how good you are at it. So everything that comes up now is an opportunity to practice that,
Mm-hmm.
all the things that have happened in these last several years, you could take it as like, oh my God, fucking the things, they just keep happening. Why is this happening to me? Versus like, it's
Okay,
happening
this
so
is what we're doing.
I can practice. I'm practicing now. I'm practicing not freaking out. I'm practicing managing this, how I am in this crisis.
I love this term. It was in that podcast that I sent you, the term existential maturity.
Mm-hmm.
That I think is part of this. That's one label that, like, there are many labels to the thing that we're like hashing out here, but the experience of having to go through all of these things cultivates existential maturity in us. And that's part of the isolation that part of the isolation that nurses experience is that the others around them lack the existential maturity that they have. But you're still bound up in the trappings of a society and the norms of that society that exist without existential maturity.
Yeah.
And that is rooted back in life expectancies, that we just have. It's not part of our consciousness. I mean, it is. It's almost like death became taboo and something solely to be avoided versus embraced as a natural function of life.
Yeah.
The most human thing that we could do.
Totally. Because it was that. It was that at one point, and now it's not. But I really think it needs to move back towards that. Because the only way that it's like a glass of stagnant water. The only way you keep it fresh is to keep water pouring in and water coming out.
It's got to move.
Has to be a flow. So if you're keeping everybody alive artificially, you know what I mean? Just let the bodies flow. Let the souls flow in and out, in and out.
I mean, that gets into such a hairy topic to me because I mean, the idea that saving a life is massively important. Mm-hmm. Preserving life. It's amazing that we're able to do it. And we shouldn't ever stop trying to fight for life. The idea of just letting it flow and it kind of brings up, all the people that are propped up on the medicines artificially that that they, when you say that, I think it brings up, should we be doing that? Should we be propping people up? Because it's created a situation where, and I've said this so many times, we have a mountain of death in front of us. Because we've been holding on to it in this artificial means, but then saving a life is the most, like, it's great. Like, we should do that.
Yeah.
So what is when all of these people, when the expiration date comes due on their DNA, and it doesn't matter how much amio we give them, or, epi, or whatever, whatever drug it is that we're going to give them, when the time runs out on that. And I think that, the baby boom generation is so huge, and that expiration date has been extended artificially. It is going to create such a heavy burden. And so, are we doing the right thing by that? That is a hairy situation to figure out. I am not saying that we shouldn't. We should absolutely be saving the lives, but we have to figure out how to navigate that mountain of death, which is why I want to do the hospice thing, because I view it as a pressure outlet valve.
Yeah.
That if hospice nurses, if the population understands the service of hospice and they choose to go on it earlier, because the statistic is that most people enter hospice within the last 1 month of life, where the benefit for hospice from a Medicare perspective is that it is a 6-month benefit. So most people are only using 1 month of that benefit. And if public education were successful, everyone would be maximizing that 6-month benefit. And because you're educated and you're going through that process more slowly, the critical situations that we find ourselves in, where we are experiencing moral injury, where we're pounding on the chest of a 103-year-old Meemaw and we break every bone in there, knowing that we shouldn't be doing it, those situations are alleviated on the healthcare workers. That's how I see hospice and the value of it. And I just think, I think that's the answer to the hairy situation of artificially.
It's definitely one answer. And if it could be, can you imagine over the whole entire United States, if everyone that qualified took advantage of that 6-month hospice benefit?
It would alleviate so much suffering on everyone, because so much of
all of it.
Everyone. I think the hospitals would make more money because we wouldn't be doing inappropriate. I mean, how many people do we keep alive on full court press, balloon pump, intubation, all the things, what do we call it? Cryotherapy, where we freeze them, we put them under the ice vent.
Hypothermia.
Hypothermia protocol. Those patients are the daily charge on that is like what, $500,000 a day? It's crazy.
It would definitely save the hospital a lot of money, because I think a lot of those patients who come back in because they're dying, a lot of times Medicare doesn't pick up the tab for that, especially if it's a readmission after such as, they got so many rules the hospital has to follow about being able to be reimbursed. And, if people were taking advantage of the hospice benefit that is already in place, which is almost incredible, really, but because it's only a benefit, it benefits everybody involved. And I don't know why it's not used more. I don't know why it's not pushed more.
I think that this is one of the injustices that I think our political system has created, that we, having the, and I don't know anything about politics, but the bipartisan system where this one presents an idea and this one rebuts it. I think that what I've seen is that every time that the topic of dying with dignity is brought up, it's repackaged as death panels. So it's politicized that, they just want to kill you because I don't even know why, but it's just politicized.
Yeah.
So the public has the perception that once you go on hospice, and this is why it's underutilized, only a month of the service out of 6 months, is predominantly because they believe that once you're on hospice, you're just going to die. And that's just not the case.
Yeah.
The hospice service provides really a holistic care modality to the patient that it's how can we help you transition from this place to the next,
Right.
and do so comfortably and with dignity.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing. And that's where the education piece comes in my mind, that if we could properly educate the public, because let's be honest, Hollywood has educated the public on what we can do. And it's absurd. It has created so many false expectations, unrealistic expectations, that we end up in the ER waiting room or in the ICU having to educate when we could be doing so many other things that it's the expectations and the reality are incongruent.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. And so, I think that really that's kind of another future of nursing. If you want to kind of wrap that all up, it really is a part of something that I know you're very passionate about. And with this new job that you started, we're all where we're supposed to be, and we all move to things where we are. And I think, this for you has been an eye-opening kind of experience, and something that, we plan to speak more on, on this podcast. And, we're putting together hopefully what will be like a series that we can put out with different aspects of hospice, and so that we can, do our part to try and educate about it, about the benefit and what it is and what it's not, and, debunk myths or, whatever, and have some people, other experts on that really can speak to exactly what it is. And,
because my only perspective is, how do we alleviate the pressure on the critical care nurse?
Yeah.
That's our experience. That's my experience. And so as I have navigated this new role, I just see that so clearly, that it's underutilized. And the real trick in the education piece for that is figuring out how to show the hospitals that providing referrals to the different hospice agencies benefits them.
Yeah.
That all of this unnecessary heroic measures are costing them millions of dollars a year.
Yeah.
If we can figure out how to do that, hospitals would, I think, jump on board with.
Yeah.
They have to. It just, like, in my mind, there is no other, like, not that hospice is the only answer. There are other answers, but there is no option for the hospitals to do nothing. It's just the volume of death that is coming is so great that we have to, and that's just in that propped up population.
Yeah. For real.
I mean, it is. I mean, I know I've shared the story before, but I'll share briefly again. That night in the ICU when we were out of Lasix and we had a bunch of lungers because it was a hot, humid summer and they couldn't breathe. And I'm pulling the last bottle of Lasix out of the hospital. And the panic that I experienced, knowing how all of the other hospitals are out too. How many people are going to die because of this? And, luckily we had, we do have other medicines and they did work, just not as well. But it was such a eye opener to the artificial
capability.
Just how pervasive the propped upness is.
Yeah.
The propped
Well, you saw
upness.
that in COVID too. I mean, you saw that in COVID too with the distribution of the ventilators and who got this and who got this. I mean, we are heavy on artificially keeping people alive.
Sure.
Because when the equipment and the things are not there, there's a lot of people who are dying. That book you're reading, the Enlightenment, it feels like a high level subject, but then as you kind of read it, I don't know, they were seeking for meaning, understanding, movement forward, reasons for things, and that it really is no different than we're still doing that today. We're still seeking, we're still searching for new ways, new technology to do improvements, to make it faster, to make it better, to keep people alive, to keep, we're always looking for something that will better the future. You can say that, but you don't really know until it comes, and sometimes it's not for the best. But
absolutely,
I think the seeking and trying to, even the people, the theorists and the philosophers, and they're high level thinking, but really the essence of it is just what is next. Where am I now? And what is next? And what are my steps for moving along with that? Once you get a sense that you really should move, you got to move along with it, and what are those steps? What is our place in it?
I mean, hearing you say all of that, it is fundamentally human to seek and search and explore nature. And it brings up the question for me, what role rest plays in that. That's really what came up. If you follow the biblical creation of 6 days, at the end of each day, it was good, and then it rested. God rested. And the idea that God rested, well, one is an anthropomorphic idea that this all creative force could do such a human thing as rest. What does it mean to rest? And there, because it's almost as if God, if we're exploring this idea, that God put into motion all of the natural elements and cycles and everything that we experience in this world, all of that was thrust into motion, into forward movement. And if we're in that image, and then he rested, and which implies that all of this experience was moving forward and playing out, and God left it to be, not in the sense that he has no control. He or she got like, I'm plenty fine with God being gender fluid, I guess. In the sense that either one of those forms is anthropomorphic. That it's applying a human element, something that we can't understand. That like the idea that if you could understand what God is, it would mean that you were God. We can't understand whatever created all of this.
Right.
It's so beyond our ability. So applying male and female labels to that creative force is just kind of a silly task to me, is my point. That is where I was going with that, is that it's not to say that God is hands off and not actively involved in his creation, but that he stopped, I guess, trying to control it or manipulate it. And those are, I think, human terms there, and that's kind of what I'm leaning or going towards, is that all of this striving, like listening to what you were saying, there was no balance in it whatsoever. It's just striving forward and pushing forward. And so many of the progressive ideas are just us being busy with progressing. And to what end?
Yeah.
To what end? Why? Like, let's just like how can we, I mean, modernity is so busy. It is so busy. Everything is vying for your attention. It's overwhelming, and there is no rest. I mean, that's, again, goes back to the thing that I've said so many times. Suicide is the seduction of rest, because we aren't getting it.
Yeah.
We're not taking care of the soul. The
Well,
person.
and we're not right. We're not taught that. We were never taught the difference. We were never taught that exists. And if you don't know that inner part of you exists and that it's the inner part that needs rest, you'll burn out. I mean, that's why that happens. It's overwhelmed for your body and your mind. And, maybe God was just offering a reflection of, what, because he may not have needed the rest, but he took the rest. And
sure. Yeah.
maybe offering
that it's for us. Yeah.
For us. Yeah. And the world we live in does not rest. The care is 24 hours, shifts are 24 hours. The text messages from the hospital with needs, 24 hours. The pulling of everything that we should and have to do and we need to do. And, especially over this, season of holidays and birthdays. And, it's the seduction of rest is real.
Uh-huh.
And if it were shed a better light, like, oh, no, I rest. You rest too? Oh, God. If we talked about rest and like sleep, like you talk about drinking on the weekend, you know what I mean? They're like, oh, yeah. Oh, you drank when you got home.
Oh, I rested so good.
Yeah. Yeah. And just, the letdown of that, like part of it, I think, is because you have to you're only with yourself. So even if you're not asleep, then you are, and you're resting. It's an awkward place to be if you're not used to it. And so that pull to always be with someone, always have someone in the room, always be something on the agenda, something you got to go to, somewhere you got to do, something you're doing for somebody else, work, all the noise, and then you're told to just rest.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many people who cannot rest. They can't.
It's control.
Yeah.
It's control.
And it's uncomfortable to be in that state of rest.
Mm-hmm.
Awake and just resting, like telling yourself, I'm taking this afternoon off and I'm just going to read.
Uh-huh.
Or, people who, when they wrote that enlightenment book, that's all people did was read.
Yeah.
But now it feels guilty. Like, well, what'd you do this afternoon? Well, I got caught up in a book. I read for like 3 hours, like what? That's crazy. Resting is a challenge for a lot of people. I don't know. I think
part of the human experience. It's a nest.
Right.
I mean, we spend how much of our lives sleeping?
Yeah. And it should be way more.
It should be.
It should be way more.
Yeah.
But we really don't. And we push till you're exhausted and you can give no more. There's this app or the measurement of, watches can measure your heart rate and you do all that. But there's another measurement. It's called the, of course, I can't think of it right now, but it's the measurement between the beats. But anyways, it's not a PR interval. It's not the RR. It's QT? It's the milliseconds. No, it's the milliseconds between. Let me just see if I can find it. But when there are irregularities in that, it can predict your physical, like how physically ill you are. Why can't I find it? Hold on. We're pausing. I got to find it because I got to be able to say what it is. So it's heart rate variability is what is able to be measured. And there's apps and you can use your iPhone. You put your finger on the camera and it kind of like you would measure your oxygen saturation or your heart rate, but it measures the variability between each beat or rate, the rate. And there's lots of things that I don't understand, lots of words, but predicts stress on your body. And I thought, oh, good. Okay, I'll get this. And it takes your sleep into account. It takes, mostly it's just the measurement. And there's multiple things that go along and most of it's stress that can disrupt this heart rate variability. And I had to shut it off because every notification, it was telling me all the time, you should rest. you should take it easy. And I was like, I slept well last night. Like, I don't really feel that stressed, but I feel like it's the in doing things that you're not really resting. And clearly my definition of rest is not what changes my physical, chemistry and makeup. And so I'm still trying to figure it out. I had to shut the notifications off. I couldn't take it anymore. It was like, you need to slow down. You need to get better sleep, and I do meditate and I do go out in nature, because I was like, how do you increase your, it's not even an increase. It's like, how do I improve my heart rate variability? And it was things like that, like be mindful, meditation, go get in nature, ground yourself, gratitude, sun spotting, noticing the beauty of this earth. Those are all things that when I looked it up, and I am doing those things. And it was still, my heart rate variability was still triggering the notifications to tell me. And so I don't know, definitely a work in progress. And it's not just about sleeping. It has to be something else. There's more to it, that our chosen actions and behaviors and thoughts do actually affect our physical makeup and the nature of our body.
So how do we leave people? We've kind of just melded one long session into 2 episodes.
Yeah.
How do we send people off?
Well, just some summaries would be, there's a lot of changes on the horizon in the future. A lot of them are going to affect healthcare and nursing and wellness and illness. There's going to be a lot of people dying because of age, and the baby boom generation is old and they are dying. And that trickle down effect will leave an impact. And, as nurses and healthcare providers, where will you fall in the impact? What will you be doing to protect yourself and your soul, your physical body and your soul, from
being carried off by the waves of suffering and death?
So suffering and death. And, I think awareness and noticing is what a lot of people will start doing now. It just feels like it's moving that way. People will be taking more notice and understanding more how things actually physically are physically affecting them. And that although you may not be able to do anything about what's happening externally, it still doesn't have to be detrimental to you. You can move through those moments and or rise above and or, go with the flow. But that takes practice. And we can use the little opportunities in our life to practice those, those things. It's not just, it's a life practice that allows us to deal with work, family, crisis. It's just a lot of food for thought. I
think we covered a lot of topics today. I feel like they were congruent for the most part, though. It seems to me that, like, everything that you're saying about the mindfulness movement and observing ourselves, being observers of ourselves, is in a lot of ways kind of a product of existing and living in a time where so much of our experience is ethereal. Of course, we're starting to think kind of outside of ourselves, and like, I'm viewing myself from here, from up here, looking down, and then if I can look at myself from up here, then I can look at myself over here and over here, and the more that I'm able to articulate, my outside observer eye on myself, the more whole I can be.
Yeah. Because you are viewing your own cracks. You are viewing your own place. And if you're viewing that, then you can also control that.
You can make changes.
Yes. You can control yourself within that. You can't control the outside influences, but you can control yourself and how you move through that. And it does start with observing.
Yeah.
I do that when I meditate sometimes. I try to remove myself from myself as a practice. Just watch. Just watch. And honestly, it has helped me in like, when you're married, it's typically your spouse is the one that most triggers you. That's because you're together all the time. I mean, it's your kids and your spouse.
Right.
When I get triggered, I do get triggered less these days. But when I do, I have taught myself and have learned that I don't have to just respond. Like the longer I practice, the more distance from the actual trigger and my response there is. And that allows me, it doesn't always work, but that allows me to offer myself an opportunity to look at the situation differently. And that it is not always about me, and I can change my reaction. And that has been a nice little gift after, 27 years of marriage.
Wow. Congratulations on that. I mean, what an accomplishment. Wow.
It's big. Let's see. Will it be, I think we're coming up on 27. Wow. After the 25, you kind of forget. We got married in 98.
That's
so in
wild.
95, no, we are 27. So it'll be 28. It'll be 28.
There's a quote, I want to say Socrates, and I'm going to try to get it right. Love is the soul that exists in two bodies. There's one soul that exists in two bodies. You two became one person.
Although separate, right? In two bodies. But it describes perfectly the reflection that we see. And so what we're seeing is a reflection of what's within. I think we talked about that on the podcast where I had lost weight and I looked different. But what you're seeing on the outside is a reflection from within. So that also means that you are seeing yourself in your spouse, and they are you if they realize. And so understanding that has also then allowed me to give him a lot more grace as I would myself. Like that is a reflection of you, and things that I'm triggered about. It's not him doing that to me. It's me. It's something that within me that, however you want to pass.
You have an expectation that is
right.
Yeah.
So that is a good definition of the love is now within two people, but it is actually the same.
I'm just thinking it's like you're like the way you said it, you're 27 this year. Like it's one person.
Right.
Like it's a person. It is.
And it has to be. And it has to be treated by both parties similarly, because if it's disproportionate, then that's when things just break, and although we've been disproportionate at times, what keeps you together is bringing it back to some kind of even ground. Yeah. Not easy. And just like anything, any crisis you're going through, it's like, this is not easy, but the will to keep going, maintain your sanity while you're doing it. That shift will be over. That era is done. That season will pass. After 27 years, we've seen a lot of seasons. We're both much more mature now and are able to view it from like a non-selfish perspective, view it from our marriage and what it is versus like, him and me. Yeah. A lot of work.
Yeah.
I don't know how we got talking about that, but longevity.
Well, I mean, you said something about how long you'd been married, and I complimented how amazing that is in today's age.
Oh, because we're talking about triggers. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But if it's not a spouse, it's going to be somebody. It's going to be a coworker. It's going to be oh my god, child. Like it doesn't matter.
Oh, I still get triggered. I still get triggered.
Oh my, we always will. It's the work. It's the work. Yeah. We will keep bringing these podcasts to you as we love to do it, and there's always something that someone needs to hear. So we continue to ask you to share and like and post questions and comments, and we will respond, answer, have you on the podcast, and we'll be back next week.
Adios.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's episode.
Remember, the conversation doesn't end here.
Keep the dialogue going by connecting with us on social media posted in the links below, or by visiting our website.
Together, let's continue to redefine nursing and shape a brighter future for those we care for. Until next time, take care, stay curious, and keep nurturing those connections.
And don't forget to be kind to yourself.